Over 1 million teachers use iExcel in their classrooms every day for one reason. They love it. Why? iExcel is where the magic happens. With just one platform, teachers can personalize learning for every student. iExcel gives teachers all the tools they need to enhance and differentiate instruction without adding work to their plates. Plus, iExcel has decades of expertise and has proven to be effective. Studies on more than 70,000 schools across nearly 50 states show that those who use iExcel outperform others on state tests. Ready to bring the magic to your school? Visit iexcel.com/PM to learn more.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Monday Matters. Jen, this Monday Matters is coming out at the end of summer, July 27th, and some of our friends, including you, are back in the office. Some of our friends are wrapping up those last few days they can before they start working with staff, and it just depends on where they are across the U.S. And then anyone listening outside of the U.S. may already be back in school and experiencing a completely different season. But welcome back. I wanted to do something a little bit different for this Monday Matters. You and I often share the things that we're learning, and as we were setting up today's show, I was just looking at the stack of books on my table, and I was like, I know Jen's a reader too. And so I just pitched the idea, why don't we bring like the last 4 great books that we've read, or just recent books. And man, you created a list so fast, and so did I. I don't think we're going to get through them all in this conversation. But Principal Matters listeners, today we just want to just share like books that Jen and I have been loving to read and some takeaways from those books. And maybe you're looking for some good reads. And Jen, I'm just looking across both our lists. None of these are education books.
I know.
None of these. And I've read some education books, but I'm not bringing them to the mic because I usually bring the authors to the mic.
Right.
But today, I think you and I have been reading a lot of memoir and fiction. And why don't you go first? Pick one from your list, and let's go there.
Well, let me also say that when we first got this idea, I felt a little guilty because I thought, well, it's an education podcast. I should absolutely have an education book. But I don't actually do a lot of that in the summer. And so this is an honest list for sure. I didn't fabricate it all. So I am currently reading This Is Not About Running by Mary Kane, and I'm not sure what I think about it yet.
Okay.
What I do know is it's a book about some of the ways that we inadvertently pressure athletes. It's about bullying within her own team. And then I have a feeling it's going to get a lot worse as she gets older and kind of gets in the professional circuit. So I'm not sure on that. I think it's a memoir. So Mary Kane is trying to tell her story, and she's so far not all that much of a sympathetic character. And so I'm waiting for that.
Wow. That's so honest.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I love the title. This is not about running, because it's not so far. It's about team dynamics and coaches and maybe inappropriate ways that athletics lifts athletes and then tears them down. And, you know, the internet and how people can say hateful things to people who are good at what they do.
Well, I'm already thinking of the powerful themes involved in that, because I've seen that in athletics, and so have you, which is the gift that brings someone so much joy then becomes like the anchor.
That's right.
That they carry too.
That's right.
Okay, I'll bring one of my books. I just finished this one. You might think this is interesting. I don't know what listeners will think about my family, but I have raised a family of book nerds. My adult children, it talked us last year into doing a book club as a family.
Oh, that's fun.
And so we pick a different book every couple of months, and then we'll all read it, and then we'll all get together through Zoom because we don't all live in the same place.
Right.
And we'll talk about the books. So the summer we're reading The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali, and I just finished it. We haven't actually talked about it as a family, so spoiler alert, Emily, because she's been reading it too. It's just such a beautiful, compelling, fictional story about the history of 2 girls growing up in Iran in the 70s and through the 80s, and then it launches you all the way fast forward into the early 2000s. But I'm really impressed. I've not read Marjan Kamali before. She has such a gift for condensing huge time periods into really strong narrative. I felt like it could have been 3 books, but she does a really good job of wrapping it all up in one. It's a book I almost wish I could read with students, just because it gives you the voice of young girls into teenage girls, into young women, and the challenges of living in a time that where the politics are really difficult, and then of course the political oppression of women, and so it's really compelling, Jen. And here's the cool part: the author Marjan Kamali is actually coming to our city in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to do a talk on this book. And so we signed up to sit and listen to her in a couple of weeks. So this was a book I would just recommend to anybody who wants just a good, compelling read. Not a hard book to read, but just a great story.
Nice. And so different from your ordinary day-to-day work. So different. That's the joy of books, right? You can transport.
Yeah. All right. Bring us another title.
So my next one is Paper Girl by Beth Macy. And this one I read about from, I think, the New York Times as a book review. And I read it because it's based in a town very close to where I live. It's about Urbana, Ohio. And Beth Macy grew up there. And she talks about how, it wasn't this perfect place to grow up. As a matter of fact, her father was known as the town drunk, and they were, living in poverty. But Urbana was on fire, right? Healthy economy, thriving schools. And then, like in many small to mid-sized towns across America, especially rural communities or communities that were supported by industry that has now been outsourced, the town hardens. And Beth Macy sees people, particularly women, who are having to hold things together because in a lot of cases the fathers are not. They're falling into addiction. The opioid crisis definitely hurt towns like this. And so, the things that supported her community are no longer there. And what happens is the schools are absolutely destroyed. And so she talks about that a lot, about how education is such a critical component, and there used to be Pell Grants that could get students to school, and then those programs were eliminated, and really the essential question is who pays for education and how. And that's not what the book jacket would tell you it's about, but that's the lens with which I read it. And so it was sobering. And I know Beth Macy got a lot of criticism from her hometown about this book, but across the country, she got a lot of positive accolades because she's telling the truth.
Yeah. Wow. What an honest reflection. So many of those themes about the loss of vitality in rural communities. I didn't even include a Wendell Berry book in my list, but how many of those themes have come across in his books. But I did include a book about small farming that people haven't heard of, because this is actually a local author here in Oklahoma. William Winchester wrote a book 20 years ago called A Very Small Farm. And he is the owner of a really small subsistence farm outside of my town, where he's been farming for 40 plus years, Jen. And he wrote this book, and it's almost like reading Thoreau. It's just his daily journals of his gardening, his beekeeping, his raising fruit trees, his time outdoors, building his own home by hand, his milking his cows in the morning. And it's just this beautiful narrative. And I read it every winter. So this is actually a book that was still sitting on my table, because this is one that in the winter I'll read when I'm really longing to be outside and it's just too cold. I'll read William Winchester's book. And also, this is just a fun side story, but he sells so much honey. Like, he raised somewhere around 900 pounds of honey a year. He ends up selling around the community. And he doesn't have a website. And so I have a friend who actually writes him a letter every year and says, please, here's a self-addressed stamped envelope. Please let me know when the honey's ready. And so he texted me a couple of days ago and said, I got the letter, Will, and if you want an order with me, then let me know how much honey you want. So I'm going to actually get some honey from the small farm.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love buying honey. I don't buy honey from the grocery store. It's always from someone locally who's doing it.
All right, what's another book?
So the next one that I'm going to talk about is Still Writing by Dani Shapiro. I love Dani Shapiro as an author, and she wrote a book about the creative process, and it really is inspiration for me about the importance of creativity, not just because I'm a writer, but because we all have some creative aspect to our lives. And as a school leader where policy drives decisions and processes are critical to have in place, I like to read whimsical and playful reflections on how to be a creative. I was going to put Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. That's another excellent book.
Yeah.
Anything by The Art of Memoir Writing by Mary Karr is great. But Dani Shapiro's work, just her voice is so easy for me to connect with. So that's a good book for anybody who is a writer. But if not, I would encourage any listener to think about the thing you would do if you had an hour or two and find a book on that, because there is a 100% guarantee that there's an author out there who feels the same draw to that activity, just like what you just talked about with beekeeping or gardening or running or reading, whatever. There's someone out there who's reflecting on that creative process.
Oh my gosh, Jen. Okay, so I don't know if we'll be able to get through all of our titles, but can I ask you to share with listeners about your memoir? Because this is something outside of education. It's not something you're doing through an education publishing firm.
Right.
But can you share that? Because I'm so excited for you.
I'm excited. I'm really nervous about this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a future podcast. But I, have been writing for, I would say, decades, just little stories in journals and writing short stories. And then over the last 5 or 6 years, it kind of came together into a cohesive, I'll call it a memoir, but it really is a collection of stories that are really intertwined. And they are about how I grew up, and about some of the patriarchal, I would say, bonds or traps that I fell into, and then trying to be, as I am, a people pleaser in a world that can be very unkind to people like that. And so I struggled a lot, Will. I struggled when I was younger with an eating disorder. I struggled in my 20s with alcoholism. I've talked about that before. And, my decision and my the luck involved in getting out of those mental landmines took quite a bit. And so that's what the story is about. It stops right before I meet my husband, but there's a lot in it that's honest and true. And I don't know of any school educator who has written a memoir like this while they're still working. So, I'm hoping that the reason I wrote it is I hope it speaks to other young women about the ways that, there's a lot of traps to fall into, and how critical it is to know thyself and find an identity and let yourself change and grow. So that's, Kent State University Press will be publishing this in February of 2027. I hope our listeners will take a look.
Well, we will bring that back to the mic, because I can't resist talking to you about the work that you're involved with. But congratulations, Jen. That's
Thank you.
That's a big commitment. This is something that won't be published, but it's something I'm working on for my family. But I've been working all spring, and I've got about 20 chapters of stories of my childhood, because my kids have been asking me for a long time to put something together. And so last year, I self-published a book for my family of my mother's stories that some writing she had left. And so this year I'm working on something that I hope I can share with them by Christmas. We'll see. Oh my gosh, Jen. I've got one more book, and I won't be, and you share one more too, but
Okay.
Playground by Richard Powers. It's a very well-known book. He writes such epic novels that make you fall in love with different places in nature. And this one is about the ocean, and it's just a compelling narrative. If you just love a great story that takes you all around the world and makes you think about technology and makes you think about the oceans and makes you care about people, Playground's a great book.
Great. And then my final one, well, I had Awake by Jen Hatmaker on that just because that one's about the power of community and relationships and friendships. But the book I wanted to round out with is called Joyride by Susan Orlean. And the reason this book is wonderful is it led me to other books she has written about. One of them is called Saturday Night, and it's about what America does on Saturday nights. The Orchid Thief, Rin Tin Tin. Susan Orlean writes books about the most mundane things, and they are absolutely riveting. So she, what this shows is that no story is simple. Nothing is, even a court case that led to the Orchid Thief. Boy, there's always so many complexities and nuance behind why people make decisions. So look up Susan Orlean. She's fantastic.
All right. Well, Emily, in this week's show notes, we'll place all of these titles when we send out this Monday Matters, so you don't have to go back and listen to the whole thing. If you're interested in seeing the titles and just a brief description of why we love them, we'll include those. And we're not getting any kudos from any of these authors or books or anything, Jen. We're not linking to any affiliate links. This is just you and me learning,
right?
And trying to share the things that we love. So I don't know, Principal Matters listeners, you may have listened to Jen and I and gone, you two are just geeking out on books and I've turned you off. Or you may be listening in and you've got books that you would love. I actually did have a good friend and listener last year that was like, have you ever thought about like doing a book club for principals? And I don't know, Jen, if anybody wants to join a book club with me and Jen, you can email us and maybe you can organize it and we'll join you. But we'd love to know what you're reading, and because Jen and I are always looking for great books, and this is also because it's summer, such a great time to do a little extra reading too. So, Jen, how can our listeners stay connected with you this week?
Absolutely. They can find me at jenschwanke.com and subscribe to my newsletter or shoot me an email there.
That's right. And you can find all of today's resources at my website at williamdparker.com or at our new web address, principalmatterspodcast.com. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.